Welcome to the Ford Mustang GTD and a promise that this is the first and last time I'm going to mention the Porsche 911 GT3 RS in this review. A, because everyone else has mentioned it in their reviews, and B, because this car could not be more different to the Porsche. They're both track focused, but that's where the similarities end. This thing goes about its business in its own unique, bold and brilliant way. And if you want to find out why it's one of the best performance cars I've driven in ages, then keep watching. I'm going to do a full walk around of the incredible body and interior in a bit, but first I want to answer a question, namely, can a big, wide, track-focused car like this one actually function on the public road? Because, let's face it, it's going to spend a lot of time there. You know, I wasn't joking about the width of this car. It's 2,080 millimeters wide. That's 150 millimeters wider than a regular Mustang. And to give you some sort of context, an M4 CSL is 34 millimeters wider than an M4 competition. That's the norm, but there's nothing about this car that is normal. Okay, maybe for our lucky friends across the pond, the unfettered sound of a 5.2-litre dry-sump supercharged V8 is normal. But for us over in Europe, this sort of noise is a real exception. It's attached to a rear-mounted 8-speed dual-clutch box made by Tremec that, along with the carbon drive shaft, is crucial to delivering the perfect 50-50 weight distribution. Power figures are generous to say the least. 814 brake horsepower and 664 pounds-foot of torque. They don't quote a 0 to 62 mile an hour time, but safe to say, when it's dry, it's in the low 3 seconds. Top speed, meanwhile, is just over 200 miles an hour. So it's ballistically quick. But for me, it's not so much about the numbers, but how this engine feels and how it sounds. It's a sledgehammer, of course it is, but the GTD wields it like Michelangelo. There's a brutishness to it that is brilliant fun, yet the linearity, response and sheer grunt is breathtaking. It's flexible too. The torque allows the GTD to pull hard even in higher gears, and that makes it very, very drivable on road. The gearbox as well, at road speeds, is really nice and quite slushy. It changes gears smoothly, it's always in the right gear, it's not trying to shuffle too much or hang on to gears. It's just really relaxed and you don't really notice it, which is what you want from an automatic gearbox when you're just cruising around. But then when you put it in manual, the rev matching and the sound that you get from it is phenomenal. And the up changes, I'm not sure they're quite as razor sharp or aggressive as the best dual clutch gearboxes, but it's only a tiny, tiny fraction off. It's a really nice gearbox. You might also have noticed how steady the shot is in this car. The roads we've been on have been mixed, but the suspension in the GTD is more than a match for them. On the rear end, it's got Multimatic adaptive spool valve shock absorbers and coilovers that sit within a redesigned rear subframe and deliver a perfect 1-to-1 motion ratio from pushrod to damper. It's motorsport-inspired tech, and it looks like a work of art. If I just tilt my head and sit up a bit, I can see it in the rear view mirror. That is super cool. It's very distracting, but it's super cool nonetheless. And the adaptive part is also super responsive. It can go from its firmest to its softest setting or vice versa in just 15 milliseconds. And then when you put it in track mode, hydraulic compression can just double the spring rate, and the front of the car drops by 40 millimeters and the rear by about 30 millimeters. We'll leave that bit for later, but in essence, what the Multimatic damping setup allows the car to do is decouple the ride versus handling compromise by utilizing the 2 springs on each damper. And the upshot is a car that feels quite heavy, but still very controlled, and yet also rides properly. Dare I say it, that with the big luxurious seats and all the standard kit, this can be quite a relaxing car to drive.
I mean, I've got it in sport mode now, so it's not the most aggressive setting, but even so, it doesn't give you the impression of something that's absolutely focused towards the track. It feels a bit more rounded than that. It's got a nice positive front end, it's very responsive, but it doesn't feel raw and it doesn't feel lightweight. And there's a good reason for that part.
You see, the Mustang GTD has undergone a fair bit of strengthening in order to prepare it for the rigours of track driving, and between that, the 5.2 litre V8 and all the other fancy hardware, it weighs in at a smidge under 2 tonnes.
But here's the thing, this car can get around the Nürburgring in 6 minutes and 52 seconds. That is ballistically quick, and if you look at all the other cars around it on the leaderboard, such as the Corvette ZR1, the Radical SR8, they're a lot lighter than the GTD. So how does it do it? Well, obviously the fancy suspension, that's going to have an impact, but also the aero package, I reckon that's going to make a massive difference too.
The headline figure is 885 kilograms of downforce at 180 miles an hour. Great, but it also needs low drag on the straight, so in comes a DRS system. The rear wing and flaps underneath the car can open or close depending on whether the GTD needs grip or speed or a bit of both.
In fact, as aggressive as the bodywork of this car looks, with its massive flared arches and cutouts from the bonnet, a lot of the most important stuff goes on the underside where you can't see it. So, at the front end, the underside is shaped like a keel, and that helps evacuate the incoming airflow through the wheel wells and the loops. That creates an area of low pressure, which in turn pins the front of the car into the ground and keeps it stable in high-speed corners. But in order to make sure that it's stable across the board and going all the way to the back, the active aero on the spoiler is working together with the active aero underneath. So there's 2 flaps underneath the front of the car to make sure that the center of pressure is kept nice and even and balanced. And that also works with the Multimatic suspension, because obviously the ride height and the control of the body is crucial to the aero. This is the sort of thing that you don't even get on a Ford Mustang GT3 racing car.
Speaking of things not on the racing car, the cabin in the Mustang GTD is a very relaxing place to sit with plenty of equipment and comfort, but I can't say that it feels particularly special.
Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but this car is going to cost about £315,000 when it comes to the UK, so you might expect an interior that feels significantly different to a regular Mustang, which is much cheaper. And you've also got a lot of the buttons and dials and switches that are very similar to the ones used in regular family SUV Fords as well.
I mean, you could say that that's the point. It's a blue-collar muscle car after all, but when it costs over £300,000, that argument wears a little thin.
However, there's definitely some nice touches, not least these Recaro seats. They're not as extreme as bucket seats that you typically find in a lot of track-focused cars, but I reckon that means they're going to be a lot more comfortable over long distances on road, which I definitely think is a good thing. And it's not like you're going to slide around in them too much. I feel pretty well hugged in and I'm not particularly wide, so that's a good sign. Also, the visibility is excellent. It's not like a typical mid-engine supercar when you can't see out. The view out the back is excellent. And if I look in the rear view mirror, I can see both the active spoiler and the Multimatic suspension back there, which is very cool indeed. We've also got some new dials and some graphics. So there's a lap timer, shift indicator, lots of information about what the car's doing, which is nice to see. And also, my favorite bit, the gear shift paddles. They are 3D printed, and the material that they're made from is recycled from F-22 fighter jets. That is seriously cool.
That's the kind of detail that makes you sit up and pay attention. It's so brilliantly unnecessary, but that's the sort of thing that you want to see on a car like this. Question is, does the otherwise quiet, restrained cabin suggest that Ford has secretly aimed the GTD a little bit too much towards the road? Well, to find out, I took the GTD on track at the Thermal Club in California. It's a great circuit, but there's 3 things you need to know before watching these on-track impressions. A, I've got a pace car in front of me, hence the lifting off on the straights. B, my helmet was indeed too tight.
What the hell? Oh my God.
And C, for unforeseen reasons that we unfortunately had no control over, we weren't able to put the car in track mode while we were on track. So what you're about to see is all done in sport mode. It's not ideal, but I hope you'll agree, it's better than nothing.
The first thing that strikes you is the engine. Now that we're on the circuit and we can stretch it out a bit, it is such a treat. It's so rare to get a supercharged engine, let alone a supercharged 5.2 litre V8. It sounds incredible. It's so linear. It's very, very fast. It's such a joy to use. Everything now is turbocharged, hybrid. The only thing that I think is comparable is obviously a naturally aspirated engine, but this, it just feels like it's got something else without corrupting the really enjoyable bit.
Once it makes it to the EU, the GTD may find its vocal cords somewhat restricted, but out here, the engine is genuinely incredible.
When we were driving the car on road, it didn't feel light, and that doesn't usually bode well for the track because it just exaggerates it with the higher speeds. But actually, it deals with its weight really, really well. The suspension is working overtime, but it's doing a great job. And I think it's just got a lovely inherent balance to it. It's the front engine rear-wheel drive layout, which is a real treat. It's adjustable. I think I'd be lying if I said you don't notice the extra weight. You do, and it would be nice if it didn't have it, because I think it does create a little bit of a disconnect or a feeling of slight uncertainty when you get that initial turning done, and you also have to be a bit more patient than you would in something that's lighter, but it will do it. It will carry the speed, and it does an incredible job of being what is a very heavy track car. I think that Nürburgring time is just the absolute proof. There's only a few areas where it's ultimately losing out to its rivals. Got to say as well, the brake feel is absolutely lovely. It's a really nice pedal. It's not too grabby. It's a very powerful brake, and it always feels on your side, even when it's cold. Gearbox as well, really fantastic. And that front end response, I mean, these are the widest tyres that Michelin has ever fitted to a sports car. And having that wider tyre meant they could be more aggressive with the compound. And that's obviously so helpful when you're trying to set lap records and you're doing consistent time on track. And apparently, Michelin were telling me they've got a VMAX test, or Ford have a VMAX test for this car, where they fill it full of fuel and they run it at VMAX until it runs out. And that's a tyre test, just to make sure, you know, it can take the pressure. Yeah, super friendly, super approachable, not the last word in being absolutely razor sharp, but something that's enjoyable to drive. It doesn't make you feel like you're not worthy of it. It's perhaps not as multi-layered as other lighter track cars, and I think that's a compromise you've got to take, especially given its on-road ability and the weight. But the engine, the gearbox, the brakes, the suspension, yes. Listen to that.
Regardless of drive mode, the GTD was a blast both on track and on road. This is a car that is absolutely crammed full of character. It's not perfect, the cabin could be a lot better, it's very expensive, the tyres don't really work in the wet, and if you're getting it in the UK, it's still left-hand drive only. But as a treat to enjoy and as a car to relish driving when the conditions are good and the fuel bills are in the back of your mind, it is stupendously good fun, brilliantly fast and loud, plus there's real engineering excellence to back it up. It is, without doubt, everything that the ultimate Mustang should stand for.